In the year 1281 AD, when Ertugrul Ghazi passed away, the Kai tribe possessed only the small city of Sout and the leadership over a few other tribes. This was the inheritance that then came to Osman Ghazi. Osman Ghazi achieved tremendous success, transforming a mere chieftaincy into a border state, and then from that very border state, he laid the foundational stones of what would become a vast empire. And when Osman Ghazi passed away, the legacy he bequeathed to his son Orhan was considerably greater than what he himself had inherited from his own father. Although Osman Ghazi had successfully laid the foundation of the Ottoman Empire, at that time there was still no truly organized army in place. The Ottomans possessed neither sufficient funds nor any kind of naval fleet. Consequently, Orhan Ghazi had to exert considerable and sustained efforts to transform the nascent empire he inherited from his father into a properly structured and well-governed state. When Osman Ghazi's life came to an end, at that specific time, Orhan Bey was approximately 40 years of age. He assumed the administration of the empire due to his father Osman Ghazi's illness, achieving numerous significant successes. While the siege of Bursa was still underway, he successfully captured Mudanya in the year 1321 AD, and for the conquest of the territories stretching from the Sakarya Valley all the way to the Black Sea coast, he dispatched Konur Alp, while Akça Koka was specifically sent by him for the conquest of Izmit. Both these commanders of Osman Ghazi were highly successful, and they managed to conquer Düzce and its surrounding territories, as well as the regions in the vicinity of Lake Sapanka, all within a remarkably short period. However, Yalova was ultimately conquered by Abdurrahman Ghazi. Upon the passing of Osman Ghazi, he was survived by 5 sons. These were Orhan, Alauddin, Pazarlu Bey, Hamid Bey, and Safchi Bey. However, when we examine the annals of history, only 2 of these names have truly endured and are remembered: Orhan and Alauddin. Orhan Ghazi at first presented a proposal to his brother Alauddin for the division of the Sultanate. However, Alauddin initially rejected this particular offer. It was solely due to Orhan's continuous insistence that he ultimately took on the significant responsibility of governing the administrative kingdom, consequently emerging as the very first vizier of the Ottoman Sultanate. Alauddin, upon assuming the role of minister, directed his special attention towards 3 crucial elements: coinage, attar, and the armed forces. Although Seljuk Sultan Alauddin had indeed granted Osman Ghazi the authority to issue coins in his own name alongside the traditional khutbah, Osman Bey, however, chose to remain content with merely the khutbah, and he did not proceed to mint any currency bearing his personal insignia. Therefore, at the precise moment of Orhan's ascension to the throne, only Seljuk coinage was actively circulating across the entirety of Asia Minor. Now, Alauddin too embraced this significant privilege of sovereignty and proceeded to issue coinage bearing Orhan's name throughout the Islamic State. Alauddin proposed distinct types of clothing for the various segments of the public, establishing and enforcing laws pertaining to these regulations, the attire for urban and rural residents, as well as for Muslims and non-Muslims, was distinctly prescribed for every single class. However, Alauddin's single greatest achievement was the military reforms that led to a sudden and dramatic increase in the Ottoman Empire's power, and which then secured its remarkable conquests for the next 300 years. The great achievement was the establishment of a regular, disciplined army for the Ottoman Empire, which became widely known in history as the Janissary Army, and it was by virtue of their immense courage that the Ottomans firmly held their ground in Europe for 300 years. Having thus secured considerable military power, Orhan Ghazi subsequently turned his full attention towards expanding his territories through new conquests. Following the successful conquest of the city of Bursa on April 6, 1326 AD, he then directed his strategic attention towards 2 other equally crucial locations, Iznik and Izmit, which were both comparable in their overall significance to Bursa. At that specific period, Iznik was recognized as a thriving industrial hub, notably surpassing Bursa in its overall size and importance. While Izmit was a vital commercial port, if Orhan Ghazi had managed to conquer these 2 cities, the Romans would have been deprived of their strong presence in the Sea of Marmara. Before the capture of Iznik city, the southern shores of Izmit Bay had been conquered by Karamirsal Bey, while the region surrounding Kandura was secured by Akçakoça, and Uskudar near Kartal along with Samandıra castle to its north were brought under control by Kunur Alp and Abdurrahman Ghazi. The blockade and siege of the city of Iznik commenced during the final days of Osman Ghazi's life. When Orhan Ghazi ascended to power as ruler, he significantly intensified the city's blockade and considerably expanded the scope of the siege. During this period, because of the Turks' good treatment of the Greeks in the conquered regions, the Greeks living around Iznik advised the city's inhabitants to side with the Turks, and some individuals even joined the war on the Turkish behalf. Now, because the city of Iznik was completely encircled by walls, it was naturally more secure. And from an architectural standpoint, it stood as the most renowned city of the Eastern Roman Empire within Anatolia. Furthermore, this very city also served as one of the sacred sites for the Orthodox faith. Upon observing the grave situation in Anatolia, the Roman Emperor Andronicus III, having ceased internal conflicts in the year 1329 AD, he set forth with his army heading towards Anatolia. Andronicus departed from Constantinople with a strong hope that he would be able to halt Orhan Ghazi's advances and conquests and thereby successfully save the city of Iznik. In addition to this, his fervent wish was to defeat Orhan Ghazi and reclaim his lost territories in Anatolia from the Turks. And when Orhan Ghazi received intelligence that the Roman Emperor himself, leading his own army, was advancing into Anatolia to wage war against him, he then entrusted the ongoing siege of Iznik city to his son Prince Suleiman. To fight the Roman army themselves, they went to Izmit while the Roman emperor encamped with his army between Gebze and Iznik, and there he decided to fight the Turkish army. The very spot where the battlefield had been chosen was in fact the most advantageous ground for the Roman army. On the morning of the 10th of June, both armies were arrayed, standing directly opposite each other. Andronicus himself took command of his forces, strategically placing his finest archers high up on the mountainsides to both his right and left flanks, while directly behind him, stretching out into the distance, was the vast expanse of the Sea of Marmara. His plan was to draw the Ottoman forces towards the open battlefield, intending to confront and engage them in combat there. Meanwhile, from a strategic vantage point, Orhan Ghazi was carefully observing the entire battlefield from the mountain, and he was meticulously devising a strategy to lure the Roman army into this difficult, uneven terrain, planning to ambush them effectively with his cavalry units. Following this strategic plan, Orhan Ghazi initially deployed his cavalry force, consisting of 300 men, directly into the heart of the battlefield. This detachment then rained down a volley of arrows upon the Roman army, causing them to begin a swift retreat. This was in fact a clever strategic war tactic designed so that the enemy, while pursuing this unit, would advance into Orhan Ghazi's carefully chosen terrain, where they could be ambushed and then decisively attacked. However, the Roman Emperor Andronicus soon perceived that this was indeed a trap, and so he immediately ordered his soldiers to hold their positions steadfastly. He then unleashed a powerful volley of retaliatory arrows upon Osman Ghazi's cavalry forces. Subsequently, Han Ghazi's cavalry squadron once more rained down a storm of arrows upon the Roman army, and this relentless assault was repeated multiple times. This caused the emperor's patience to reach its breaking point, and he commanded his cavalry to launch an assault to completely destroy the archer contingent. As the Roman army, under the direct command of its emperor, marched into the battlefield, Orhan Ghazi's vanguard unit was forced to retreat back towards his main army. In response, Orhan Ghazi immediately deployed fresh cavalry squadrons into the fray. It was at this point that the full-scale battle truly commenced. Orhan Ghazi's forces, thanks to their superior archery skills, quickly gained a decisive advantage over the Roman legions. When the emperor observed this critical situation, he commenced a strategic retreat with his mounted cavalry. However, the Ottoman cavalry's assault was incredibly swift and overwhelmingly fierce, that amidst the ensuing chaos and confusion, the emperor sustained a severe leg injury from an arrow strike, and very soon, word rapidly spread throughout the Byzantine army that their emperor had perished. This news created intense disarray within the Roman army, at which point Orhan Ghazi, with his entire force, descended upon the battlefield. The Roman emperor was utterly unable to halt the widespread confusion that had gripped his troops, and he, accompanied by a select few of his personal guards, fled from the battlefield and boarded a vessel, while merely a fraction of his army managed to embark on ships and depart towards. While only a part of the army boarded the ships and set off like Casturia. The rest of the Roman army was not so fortunate to escape onto boats and return alive to Casturia. Some of the Roman army was killed by Orhan Ghazi's soldiers. The remaining soldiers became prisoners of war at the hands of Orhan's army. Meanwhile, a portion of the army perished by drowning in the river. Thus, in this first battle with the Roman Empire, Orhan Ghazi achieved a magnificent victory, and the Roman Emperor Antony could barely escape alive and return to Casturia. After defeating the Byzantine emperor, Orhan Ghazi returned with his army to the siege of the city of Ajnik. The Roman emperor's army, which was the only hope for the city of Ajnik, was defeated by Orhan Ghazi and returned to Casturia. After this defeat, all hopes for the city of Ajnik were extinguished, and the townspeople had no choice but to surrender. Thus, the most important city of the Eastern Roman Empire in Anatolia, Ajnik, came under the control of the Ottoman Empire. In 1331 AD, after the conquest of the city of Ajnis, Orhan Ghazi entered the city victoriously and allowed the people to take their belongings and leave the city. Until the evening of this victory, Turkish soldiers, on Orhan Ghazi's orders, continued to announce in the streets of Ajnik that your possessions and lives are now entrusted to us. You can freely practice your religion. After this, the commander of the city of Ajnik returned to Istanbul with his soldiers by ship. However, due to Orhan Ghazi's good conduct, most people preferred to stay in the city of Ajnik, and very few people left the city.